Hello and welcome back to another mind-boggling episode of the Bible in 1 year with the preacher's husband. Today we are in Psalms. We're doing Psalm 3, 4, 12, 13, 28, and 55. I'm just going to tell you a few things that stuck out to me about these Psalms. Tomorrow we're doing 2 Samuel 16 through 18 and we're going to find out the rest of the story. I love it. Alright, so let's get to it. Psalm 3. In the CSB, the title is Confidence in Troubled Times. The title in the King James is The Lord Helps His Troubled People. Pretty similar. It says here, a Psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom. Now, this psalm is one of the 14 psalms in the Bible that are linked directly by virtue of their titles with specific events in the life of David. Now, the titles reference specific events in David's life, but in this case, it was a time when he fled from his son Absalom. But the actual content of this psalm is kind of generalized. It doesn't really give any specifics of the events when it comes down to that. For this reason, God's people who face the sort of life circumstances discussed in these Psalms can identify with the author's words and be blessed. The episode of Absalom's rebellion and David's escape from him is recorded in the 2 Samuel chapter 15 through 18, which we're kind of in the middle of right now. So there we are with that. Psalm 4, the CSB title is A Night Prayer, and the title in the King James Version is The Safety of the Faithful. It says, for the choir director with stringed instruments, a psalm of David. Now, this is the first psalm in the book of Psalms to have musical instruction to the choir director. While there's no description about the specific setting or the events in this psalm, its theme and content are very similar to Psalm 3. The next on our list of psalms to do is Psalms 12 and 13. So we're going to get to Psalm 12 and 13. Psalm 12, Oppression by the Wicked is the title in the CSB. In the King James, it's Man's Treachery and God's Constancy. It says here, for the choir director, according to Sheminith, a psalm of David. Now we remember that Sheminith was the number 8, or actually an 8-stringed instrument. What stuck out to me here was in verse 6. It says, the words of the Lord are pure, like silver refined in an earthen furnace, purified 7 times. We've heard about that before, haven't we? That silver refined in a previous psalm. Now, in contrast to the unreliability of the words of the wicked that we saw in verses 2 and 4, the Lord's words are pure like silver refined, meaning that they are absolutely trustworthy. And the 7 times here refers to the fullest sense, or the fact that a person cannot exceed this limit. In other words, 7 times mean that's as pure as it can possibly ever get. It is purely pure. Alright, Psalm 13. It says the title here is A Plea for Deliverance. In the CSB, in the King James, it is Trust in the Salvation of the Lord. It says, for the choir director, a psalm of David. How long, Lord, will you forget me forever, is verse 1. Do you think God can forget you? Makes you think, don't it? Do you think God can forget you? Psalm 28 is next. And the title in the CSB is My Strength. The title in the King James is Rejoicing in Answered Prayer. This is a psalm of David. It says, Lord, I call to you, my rock. Do not be deaf to me. If you remain silent to me, I will be like those going down to the pit. Now, in verse 1 here, deaf and silent are often connected with being far from. These concepts describe God's lack of intervention in a time of need. The pit here is sometimes parallel with Sheol, the realm of the dead. So those going down to the pit refers to those who are going to die. Now, verse 2 stuck out to me as well. It says, "Listen to the sound of my pleading when I cry for your help, when I lift up my hands toward your holy sanctuary." Now, lifting up hands was a common gesture for prayer and also in worship. You know how I feel about that. I think we ought to lift our hands up and praise God and just not be afraid about what other people think while raising our hands. Let's just do it. The sanctuary here is a specific word in Hebrew of davir, and that means it's referring to the innermost part of the sanctuary, or the holy place, or the holy of holies. This was the place where the Ark of the Covenant resided, but more importantly, it was the location of the mercy seat, the place from which the Lord dispensed mercy on his people. We read about that in Exodus chapter 26, verse 34. Now we're going to move on to our last psalm, which is Psalm 55. And this psalm is titled "Betrayal by a Friend" in the CSB. And in the King James it says, "Trust in God concerning the treachery of friends." So very similar. "For the choir director with stringed instruments, a maskil of David." What stuck out to me in this one was verses 9 through 11. These verses recall when God judged those who were building the Tower of Babylon by confounding their speech, or confusing their speech. The terms city and walls and the description of the wickedness associated with them are further connections to Babylon. The next part that stuck out to me was 12 and 13, actually 12 through 14. There was a shift here, and this shift is significant because it demonstrates that the culprit here in this psalm was not some random distant enemy or a foreign country, but it was a close friend, a worship companion to be exact. This friend did not merely abandon the psalmist, but actually participated in the malicious insults themselves. That really stinks, to have a friend betray you, doesn't it? And a friend to participate in malicious insults against you. There's probably not much worse feeling in the world when that happens. Well, what do you think? I hope this touched you. If it has, click the like button and the subscribe button, and of course click the little jingle bell so you can get notified the next time I upload a video, which will be tomorrow. We'll see you then.